Hi everybody, it's Barbara with Acting for Community Theatre. Today I want to talk about your body. Now the first thing is I may have to do this video in two parts, so we'll see how it goes. This might be part one. I call this video Move It or Lose It. And first, we're going to talk all about the Move It category. So let's get started. So my first tip is to follow your instincts when you're in rehearsal, particularly in the early phases of rehearsal when everybody is exploring the play, they're exploring the characters and the action, and they're just doing the things that you have to do in order to open the play up so that you can get down to the nitty-gritty of it and then polish it up for an audience. So while you're in that first exploratory phase, which is usually the first few rehearsals and often into blocking rehearsals if that's the way your director works, what your director probably wants to see is you offering them different choices when it comes to working on stage, and when it comes to your character, when it comes to the moment, when it comes to what you're playing, when it comes to your blocking. And blocking, of course, is just how actors move around the stage. So when you're in those early rehearsals, you're just starting to read through a scene, you've got scripts in your hand, or maybe you had to come in off book, but you're up on your feet and you're working on the scene and you have an instinct to move. And I know as a director, I can always tell because I can literally see the impulse to move in their bodies. And often, particularly new actors at community theater will hold back. They won't move because they're afraid. They don't know what to do. They're saying their lines. They're waiting to be told where to move or if to cross or to sit. They're waiting to be told what to do. And it's just because they're not familiar with it. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to cause a scene. And so they just wait to be told what to do. But I want to encourage you not to do that. Follow your instincts. If you feel like you want to cross the stage, do it. If you feel like you should be standing up or sitting down or doing something with your prop, do it. Let your director see what you have in mind. I can't tell you how many times as a director I have seen actors do brilliant things on stage in the early rehearsals that I would never have thought of. And it doesn't even mean that they understood what they were doing. They just had an impulse to do it. And I know from being an actor, being a director, being a writer, that our impulses are often so bang on. They're often so good. And sometimes not. And that's okay too. Or sometimes it can be something that's way too big, but the director can pull it back just enough where suddenly it becomes something that's really magic. Or it can lead to something, it's not quite right, but it takes everybody's mind off into a new direction, and that is a perfect way to go. So follow your instincts on stage. If your director tells you not to do it anymore, then don't do it. But otherwise, you absolutely should, because most directors want you to show them choices, because they can't think of everything. The second tip is, of course, take blocking notes. You should always come to your rehearsal with your script and a pencil with an eraser on the end. And you should always be taking down your blocking notes because, as we know, they change. They change radically over time and they're constantly changing. Now, I know that some actors are not so great at taking blocking notes. They lean on the stage manager for their blocking notes, but it's really not a good idea. It slows down rehearsal. It makes everybody else think that maybe they should be looking at the stage manager for their notes. It's your job, actors. It's your job to take down revised and new blocking. And just come up with a notation system of some kind that makes it really fast and easy for you to just quickly, very quickly, just take a quick note. I have a notation system that I work with and I would give to my actors, but there's lots of them out there on the internet. And it's just a matter of marking crosses and sits and stands and exits and entrances and those kinds of things, and when you actually move. So just find a good notation system, learn how to use it, and take blocking notes. My next tip is actually knowing when stillness is best, knowing when not to move. Stillness can highlight actual action. It can tell us a lot about what the character is thinking. Your character might be overwhelmed. They might be stunned into silence. They might be terrified into and frozen. They might be feeling super confident and just standing in their power, waiting for something to happen. And that power in that stillness can be really, really something. So take note of the times when stillness could actually help you tell the story more than moving around the stage. Because sometimes stillness is the most powerful thing that we have as actors to be able to explain what's going on with our character without any words at all. Number 4 is to use your movement to support the action or the subtext. That's what blocking should always do, is support the action and the subtext. Now, your director ultimately is in charge of this, and he or she will direct you and block you in order to support the action and the subtext in the scene. That's their job. But while you're exploring, and even past that time in very tiny ways, you can help support the action and subtext of your character of that moment by movement. So if you're exploring and you're in a scene where you're confronting someone, you probably wouldn't turn your back on them. You would probably stand strong and look at them face to face. If you were pleading with someone, you would probably move towards them. If you were trying to get someone to leave you alone, you might turn your back on them. You might walk away. And even the small things, even reaching out with a hand, it is part of that supporting the scene itself, the action and the story and the subtext for your character with a small gesture, with a small movement, with a look just over your shoulder. So in the early rehearsals, while you and your director are still looking at blocking, feel free to make those larger movements, crosses, and things that make sense with the action of what's going on in the scene. And later on, once the blocking is fixed, think about the little things. We'll talk about that a little later. But always try to support in your movement the action and the subtext. And my next tip, of course, is to support your character. So at the very beginning of rehearsals, your director might know more about your character than you do, but certainly once you get into it, after a while, you'll probably be the expert on your character. At least we hope you will be. When you get to that point, and earlier too, you're going to want to start thinking about movement. How does my character move? What are they like? Some people are just heavier on the earth, and I don't mean in terms of their weight, I mean in terms of the way that they carry themselves. They move more slowly. They like to be still more. They might like to sit more. And other people are really bouncy and flighty. I know you know those people on both sides of the equation there. And then some people are in between. Some people are really physical and some people are not. Some people, it just feels like they float. And other people are very, very grounded down to the earth. Some people can flow around a space like a river, and other people lumber along like a bear. So you just want to think about how your character moves. Don't put too much weight into it. You don't want to get overly obsessed with becoming a bear on stage. You just want to drop in a little bit of the energy and think about how they move. Look at the language patterns. Look at how they speak. Do they talk really quickly? Do they talk in long, lumbering sentences? Do they sound like a nervous character? Do they feel more grounded? Are they confident? Is their status high or low? And do they have any physical affectations? Just think about your character and think about all the different ways that their physicality can be shown on stage to help with the character in the story. Again, don't go too far with this. Just think about it. Number 6 is entrances and exits. This is a big one because I often will see community theater actors come into a scene or more commonly leave a scene and they're just sort of wandering off. They don't really know where they're going or why they're going. You need to know what happened just before you entered the scene and what you might be facing in there. And you need to know when you're leaving a scene, why you're leaving and where you're going. If you're coming in and you're coming in to confront somebody because you just found out off stage that this person had betrayed you, for example, you're going to come in with a very different energy than if you're coming in and you don't want to go to this damn dinner party and yet you have to. So you're coming in trying to be socially invisible. That's a whole other energy. You need to understand what's just happened to your character and what they're facing when they come in. Leaving a scene is the same. We don't just leave unless we have somewhere to go in real life. So are you going to go and chase after your lover? Are you going to go to work where you don't want to? Are you going to go pick up your child from school? So it really makes a difference. Make sure you know where you're going and why. Why are you leaving and what are you off to do? Because you need to have that energy in your body and that focus, that intent as you leave. And I dare say a lot of actors don't think as much about this as they should. So take note. Number 7 is to use props and stage business more effectively. Again, we're talking about telling a story. This is a little bit more advanced. We're getting a little more advanced as we go because the blocking and the movement is getting smaller as we go. So when I talk about using a prop, I mean, if your character just is in a fight with someone and they're getting bothered about like, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? And your character's saying, I'm fine. I'm just fine. So you can use I'm fine, I'm just fine vocally, obviously, to express how you're not fine. But you could also make the choice of you're going to open a jar or pick up a book or something, and you're struggling with it for some reason. You can't open the jar, or you go to pick up the book and it just slips out of your hand like 2 or 3 times to the point where you want to throw it to the ground while you're saying, I'm fine, I'm just fine. When we can clearly see that you're not. And it's really interesting for audiences to watch what's going on with the character underneath the surface. They might be saying, I'm fine, and they might not be able to open a jar. Once you start getting to know the play, once your lines and your blocking, your basic blocking are there, you can really start exploring little tiny things. A prop can be 30 seconds of comedy. Hopefully not going too far, but I would always try it. This is sort of connected to the first note, which is to follow your impulses. If you have an impulse and it's got to do with a bit of prop or a bit of stage business, just go for it. Just follow it, because maybe you're going to end up lifting the entire scene into a whole new place or bringing the house down when it's not even there in the script, but it's there in the physicality of something that you're doing. So just think about your props, because they can be an actor's very best friend. And the next tip is connected to that, which is to take the tiny little movements, not regarding props necessarily, just tiny movements that can really make a moment. And that could be simply a look over your shoulder. It could be a little double take. It could be that hesitation that you have before you pour a drink for someone that makes us kind of wonder. And so, again, it's a more advanced thing, but once you've got that play kind of under your belt, think about those little moments that don't necessarily have anything to do with props, but can still give you that that added layer in your storytelling and in your character relations with other people. So overall, the key to movement on stage is to follow your instincts, is to understand the moments that are going on in the play, understand the action, understand what your character wants, understand what they're really thinking, so understand their subtext, and understand the moment before and the next moment you're going into. All those things will help the director and the rest of the cast tell an even better story, and it's going to raise the bar on your play and the success of your play and on your performance. Okay, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed all these tips. And as always, I'll see you soon.